Hello everyone. So this is the second video of chapter the last lesson. In the first video we have covered till here, and I have also introduced you the important characters of the story. That the French, a little boy, a school going boy, and M. Hamel, he's a teacher in the school. So here the story so far, if you haven't seen the previous video, kindly see it, and so that you will get the idea what is all about. So without wasting time, let's start the video. So we know we read this, but I'm going to start it again from here. So poor man, the French called him poor man because he is going today, a new teacher will supersede him. So it was in the honor of his last lesson. The Mr. Hamel was wearing his fine Sunday clothes. And now I understood. Who understood? The French, what he understood. So now the things are quite clear to him. The why the old man of the village was sitting there in the classroom at the back of the room, right? And it was because they were sorry for that they had not gone to school more. So they cannot go to school, right? They cannot enjoy the French any longer in the district of Alsace and Lorraine, and it was their way of thanking our master for his 40 years of faithful service. Now you can believe, you can imagine. So Hamel spent 40 years, a large or the big part of his life, or you can say that a plenty of time he has spent in the school, and it was a kind of the thanking for Hamel for his faithful service and showing their respect for the country that was theirs no more. Why the country was theirs no more? Because the French is no longer associated with the France, and the German will be there in these two districts of France, Alsace and Lorraine. That means they are being uprooted from their own land. So while I was thinking of all this, who was thinking? French. I heard my name called. So who called his name? It was my turn to decide. What to decide? We have discussed in the starting that there was the Hamel wanted to ask some question about participles. So Hamel called him. What could I have not given to be able to say that dreadful rules for the participles all through? So at once French was so much interested, so excited to speak all the rules of participles in a single go, very loud and clear, but without one mistake. But all of a sudden what happened? He got mixed up on the first words and stood there. So he wanted to speak all the participles rules, but it was not possible for him. He got mixed up and the holding on to the my desk. So he was near the desk, he was holding the desk, and his heart beating, not daring to look up. So he was feeling maybe he was embarrassed not to speak all the participles, and that's why he was not having enough courage to look up. So I heard Hamel say to French, what he said: I won't scold you, little French. You must feel bad enough. You are already feeling bad because you see how it is. Every day we have said to ourselves, what we said to ourselves? Bah is here expression used for contempt. I have plenty of time. We always say that whenever we start the new learning, we say that, oh, we will have a lot of time. We can learn it tomorrow, day after tomorrow, but I will learn it tomorrow. But now you see where we have come out. So now the scenario is completely different. That is a great trouble with Alsace. She puts off. She is here for the Alsace, right? The country, the place name. She puts off the learning till tomorrow. So no, you are not the only one in the classroom that who has not learned lesson, but there are many more in the city. And now these fellows out there will have right to say to you, how is it you pretend to be Frenchman, yet you can neither speak and nor write your on language. Now you can see, you call yourself French man, but you are unable to write your own language. How pathetic it is, how ironical it is, right? But you are not the worst. poor little French. There are many more like you. We have all a great deal to reproach ourselves with. Your parents. So the Hamel continued speaking. Your parents were not anxious enough to have you learn. So Hamel saying that your parents were not interested in educating you. They preferred to put you to work on a farm or at the mills. So they wanted him to work in a farm or in a mill so as to have a little more money. So they wanted little French to earn money for the family or for their survival or for livelihood. And I have been blamed also. So Hamel says that he himself is responsible for that. Why he's blaming himself? Have I not often sent you to water my flowers instead of learning your lessons? So sometime Mr. Hamel himself allowed French to water his flowers instead of learning his lessons. And I was wanted to go fishing. Did I not just give you a holiday? And whenever the Mr. Hamel wanted to go on fishing, he himself gave holiday to French. And then from one thing to another, so the one thing to another, Hamel went on talking of French language, saying that it was the most beautiful language in the world, and the clearest, the most logical, that we must guard it among us and never forget it. So now he is praising about the French language, because when people are enslaved, very important line, when people are enslaved, as long as they hold fast to their language, it is as if they had the key to their prison. So remember, as long as we are attached to our language, that means we have the reason to come out from the prison. And but these French sitting in the classroom, all the people including the students and the old people from the place, they call themselves Frenchman, but they are not associated. They haven't learned their language. They are unable to even write in their own language. Then he opened a grammar and read us our lesson. I was amazed to see how well I understood it, and all he said seemed so easy, I think, too. So on that particular day, whatever the Hamble was teaching, that was so easy, and I had never listened so carefully, that he had never explained everything with so much patience. It seemed almost as if the poor man wanted to give us all he knew before going away. It was like the scene there, just like the man before going, he wanted to give all his knowledge, his learning to the students sitting in the classroom, and to put all into our heads in one stroke, in a one stroke, or at one stroke, in a one attempt. So he wanted to put all these things in their minds in a single attempt. After the grammar, we had a lesson in writing, and that day M. Hamel had new copies for us. So what kind of copies he was having? And there was written something. What was written? France, Alsace, France, Alsace. They looked like the little flags floating everywhere in the classroom. So when he distributed the pages or the paper, they were looking like the that flag floating everywhere in the school room, and hung from the road at the top of our desks. So you ought to have seen how everyone set to work. So everybody was ready to work, and how quiet it was. So there was silence in the classroom. The only sound was the scratching of the pens over the paper. So nobody was speaking on that day, but only the sound was of the pens scratching over the paper by the students. Once some beetle flew in. Beetle is a flying insect. Flew in, entered in the classroom. Nobody paid attention to them, not even the littlest one. Even the small, a little boy in the classroom, he did not pay attention to these beetles, who worked right on tracing their fish hooks. So he was so busy in tracing, in making the fish hooks, as if that was French too. And on the roof, the pigeons cooed very loud. Cooed is a sound made by pigeons. So here on the roof, what the French heard, he heard the pigeons were cooing very loud, and I thought to myself. So French thought to himself what he thought, and will they make them sing in German? They means here Prussian. Will Prussian make them sing in German? Even the pigeons, I don't think so it's possible. They can force the people of the Alsace and Lorraine to speak in German, but they cannot force pigeons to sing, to coo in German language. Whenever I looked up from my writing, I saw Hamel sitting motionless in his chair and gazing is here, looking first at one thing and then at another. So he was looking in the classroom, whatever was there, he was looking as if like he wanted to fix in his mind just how everything looked in that little classroom. So he wanted to create a picture in his mind on the last day of his lesson, what was there in the classroom he wanted to fix in his mind before leaving this school forever. Fancy here, imagine. For 40 years he had been there in the same place. You can imagine that he has spent his 40 years in that school, and he was so much attached with that, and with the garden outside the window and his class in front of them. So his garden was there, his living place was there near the class, and his class in front of them. Just like that, only the desks and the benches had been worn smooth. So over a long time, the benches and the desks were in the uses, and because of that they have become smooth. And the walnut tree in the garden were taller, and even the walnut trees, they have become so tall. And the hope vine creeper, you can say that had planted himself twisted about the windows to the roof. So even the hope vine from the window to roof, it has reached from the windows to roof. How it must have broken his heart to leave all it. Yes, we can imagine, we can feel his pain. He was so much sad, and it was very difficult for him to leave the place. Poor man. We know why French calling to him poor man. To hear his sister moving about in the room above, packing their trunks. So we can say by this line, his room may be the upper story of the classroom, and they must have leave the country next day. And in the room, his sister was packing their bags and trunks, but he had the courage to hear every lesson to very last. So he had courage, he has strength to continue his lecture on the very last day to the very last. And after the writing, we had a lesson in history, and then the babies chanted there, ba, baby, boo, boo. Down there at the back of the room, old Hoser had put on his spectacles and holding his primer. Primer, we know, the learner book for the learner book for any student. So in his both hand, so old Hoser was having the book in his hand and spelled, he was speaking something, and what you could hear that he too was crying. So old Hoser was also crying. His voice trembled with emotions because he was overwhelmed by emotions, and it was so funny to hear him, and that we all wanted to laugh and cry, but it was not the time to laugh. And how well I remember it, that the last lesson, so it was like a everlasting image in his mind, in the mind of French. So all at once the church clock struck 12, maybe the time of 12 at noon, then Angelus, and at the same moment the trumpets, musical instrument of Prussians, returning from drill. Drill is their practice. So now they were returning from drill. We know they were practicing early at the chapter in the open field back of the sawmill, but now they are returning from their practice. And sounded under our windows. So the noise was quite clear to French because they were near the classroom windows. M. Hamble stood up very pale, become yellow. So he was very sad in his chair, and I never saw him look so tall. So tall is here. He was so sad. He was having long face because he was having so much pain in his heart, and that's why he was looking so tall, so sad. My friends, he said, he is here. Hamble said, my friends, but something chalked here, blocked him. He could not go on. He could not speak. He could not speak apart from these two words. The word is here, I and I. And then he turned to the blackboard, took a piece of chalk, and the bearing on with all his might is here power, strength. With all his strength, he took a piece of chalk and he wrote as large as he could. What he wrote? Vive la France, vive la France. And then he stopped and leaned is here, bent slightly, his head against the wall, and without a word, and he made a gesture. What was the gesture? To us, with his hand. So he made a gesture with his hand, and what he wanted to say? The school is dismissed, you may go. So he could not speak what he wanted to speak. He was so overwhelmed at that particular moment, and he dismissed the class by giving gesture. So this is the text, and I hope the chapter is quite clear to you. Thanks a lot for watching. See you around.